The Buymageddon is upon us. Lots of things are changing. You're going to have players going in and out of your roster, with especially with all the buys. Lots of great players getting dropped. I'm seeing that in my league, and I'm sure you're seeing that as well. But one thing has been the same, and that is the Jets still haven't figured things out. Let's talk about it. We'll start off with Justin Fields. I hope that you were not starting Justin Fields out there. He put up about 4 points this week. If he hits your waivers, which I think he will in a lot of places, especially if there were owners starting him, if you want to pick him up, throw him on your bench, that's fine. He is not starting this week. We have Tyrod Taylor starting. That was just announced today, I believe. So I would just personally leave him to waivers. I think the more interesting player to talk about is going to be Breece Hall. So Breece Hall, still very involved in this offense. He had 11 carries in this game, 38 yards, and sometimes gets involved as a receiver. You see 2 of 14 here, 3 targets. Breece Hall, still going to be the main guy, even with Tyrod Taylor around. And I think that at this point in the year, we still want players who are putting out consistent production, especially at the running back position. I don't think it's very likely that Breece Hall is an end-of-year player, unless he is getting traded to a contender like the Chargers or the Chiefs or whatnot. I think we have to assume that his value is going to be on the Jets. We should not project any trades, and therefore I think his value is around maybe 6 to 8% of your FAAB as a stable, solid contributor for the next couple of weeks. Another quarterback going to perform this week significantly was Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams put up about 5 points depending on your format. Probably shouldn't be starting anyways. Maybe he was on like the verge of starting or whatnot. Player that you might want to move to your bench at this point. Might be worth 0 or 1% for a bid. I might do 0 max. I don't even think he's worth the 1%. But again, maybe a player you can toss on your bench, see if he pans out later in the season. And this isn't a Bears win, but they really dominated on the ground here. You can see 40 carries to the 26 pass attempts. Yeah, definitely winning this game on the ground. I don't think Caleb Williams is a bad quarterback, but probably a little bit too variable that we want to be starting him at this point in the year. So again, maybe 0 to 1% on him, but I think the more interesting player here is Rome Odunze. Rome Odunze has looked like a top 12 overall wide receiver in the entire league coming into these last few weeks, but his touchdown numbers have started to kind of dip off, whereas he was really strong with that at the start of the year. In this game, 6 targets, but just 2 receptions for 31, so about 5.1 points. I still feel really good about Rome Odunze. Despite DJ Moore being at the top of this list here, I think Rome is their number 1 wide receiver now, a player that you're going to want to start or potentially flex until the end of the year. And so I think you can bid fairly aggressively on Rome in the 10 to 12% range, which, as you're going to see, is kind of the aggressive range that we want to be for a lot of these elite players. I know it sounds light, but 10 to 12% are going to start chopping away at a lot of people's remaining FAAB. And so that's where we want to be on Rome. Moving on to our other and probably most disappointing quarterback of the week, Tua Tagovailoa. Negative points in some formats. He certainly wasn't mine. I think Tua is not a player that should have been starting this week to begin with. If he was starting for you, I think he's worth dropping. The Dolphins still haven't fired their coach. I think that's coming up soon, and sometimes teams kind of resurge after that does happen, so maybe there's some upside there, but I really don't think that's something we should be hoping on and expecting for Tua. In this game, I think the most valuable player you want to talk about is going to be down here with Jalen Waddle. 4 targets, 1 reception for 15. I think Waddle's still the clear number 1 receiver in this offense, despite Malik Washington being a little bit more heavily targeted in this game. I think Waddle's the guy you want to start here, and probably is still startable going forward, kind of regardless of who the QB is. I think it will be Tua for the time being. I think Waddle you can bid fairly aggressively on, around 7 to 9%, which is kind of a lot. That puts him in the mid wide receiver 2 range, but I think he's a guy you can truly start in your flex spot for many weeks to come. Moving back real quick, missed a guy here. We have Alvin Kamara on the Saints I wanted to talk about. Not a great day for him. He put up about, call it 5.9 points, just 11 carries, and Alvin Kamara also great receiver, just 3 receptions for 1 yard. We're going to see Alvin Kamara extract the most value out of his touchdowns in this offense, and then also out of the reception side of things, so not delivering a lot of value there, but I think he still has that moving forward. That being said, I don't think Kamara is on your end of your roster. I think he will get you very, very close to it, though, maybe in the 12 to 14 week range. So I think we can kind of similar to Breece, but maybe a little bit more lighter on it. we want to pick up a player who we know is starting, especially Kendre Miller just went down to an ACL tear, so Devin Neal is going to be the new backup. We'll, of course, see Taysom Hill get involved every now and then. But Alvin Kamara is a guy that you can start for a couple weeks moving forward. I think we can bid in the range of about 3 to 5%, maybe even a little bit more, depending on how your running back position looks going into these bye weeks. Moving on, we have the Raiders getting blown out by the Chiefs. The Chiefs look great. Rashee Rice came back and immediately dominated in this game. The player I want to talk about here is going to be Ashton Jeanty. Has not looked like the best rookie running back. I think that's pretty obvious to say. The question is where does he stand at this point? I think Jeanty still valuable and still has plenty of upside given his high draft capital, talent profile, how much the team wants him to work out, given their investment in him. And so I think Jeanty will get used more and will just generally do better in the games that the Raiders do better in. So this is a very tough one for him. He put up 4.4 points. We're going to be bidding aggressively. Again, kind of similar to the Romo Doomsday range. We're going to be around 9 to 11% on Ashton Jeanty. All these numbers, again, going to be super subjective. If you are struggling through these bye weeks and you need to push those numbers up a little bit, totally understand, and that is something that you can go ahead and do as well. Moving on, another game that I feel like all of these have either been blowouts or dominated in some fashion. The Rams dominating the Jacksonville Jaguars in London. And in this game, we have two Jacksonville Jaguars I want to talk about. We have Brian Thomas Jr. for starters. Targeted 7 times, 3 receptions, 31 yards, 6.1 points. Not inherently a terrible day. Certainly not great. I think the bigger storyline is that Travis Hunter, who head coach Liam Cohen said he wanted to get more involved, targeted 14 times. As well as, I believe, let's see, 1 carry here. Yep. So definitely getting the ball and getting very involved, which is great to see for Travis Hunter. Might be flexible moving forward. But for Brian Thomas Jr., I think we have to wonder if he is still in the elite category of receivers, and it does not appear that he is, especially if Travis Hunter is going to be a 1B or a very highly involved 2, which is what they've said they wanted to do with him, and it hasn't been the case up until now. So if that's what we're going to be looking at moving forward, which I think that you have a very reasonable thought to believe that, Brian Thomas Jr.'s value has certainly dropped. The Jacksonville Jaguars team, 4-3, still going to have a lot of great matchups in the AFC South. So we want to bid a little bit to get Brian Thomas Jr., but he might not be on your end of season roster. This again might be a week 12 to 14 situation where you're starting him for a couple weeks moving forward, but you're going to eventually have to ease off of him. I might bid around the 6 to 8% to get a guy like Brian Thomas Jr. And then up here we have Travis Etienne at running back. Similar story. He still looked fine in the sense that 8 carries of the team's 19. It's a decent carry percentage, 44 yards, and then just 1 reception for 11 here on 3 targets. So Etienne, 6.5 points. I think the exact same thing about Etienne as Brian Thomas Jr. in the sense that you're going to be able to start him probably weeks 12 through 14. No longer an elite player like he was a year or two ago. And so we might want to be bidding around 6 to 8% on him as well. Moving into our first competitive game of the day, we had the Eagles and the Vikings. This was the saving grace of the 1 o'clock Eastern time window. Eagles, I think we've talked about every week, kind of like the Jets. Difference is that the Jets every single week have had nothing great going on for them. The Eagles every week have one thing great, one thing not great. Well, this week happened to be Jalen Hurts passing week. We have 19 completions, 326 yards, almost all of those going to Devonta Smith or A.J. Brown. And that's great. I mean, these are guys that people have been completely off of this year, so love to see that they're getting involved. Hurt Dallas Goedert a little bit. That's fine. I think he's been generally very involved in this offense. The player that it hurt the most was Saquon Barkley. This was not a rushing game for the Eagles. I know it's 23 pass attempts, 23 rushes. This was a pass-heavy script for the Eagles comparatively to some of the other games. And Saquon in general, just 18 carries, 44 yards, no touchdown, only 1 reception for -2 yards. Not his best day, 5.2 points in total. I think Barkley still has plenty of upside. The Eagles are going to win lots of games on the ground. He's going to get involved in many 1-2 plus touchdown games, break off a couple big rushes here and there. This was just not one for him. I don't think Barkley is in the conversation of the best running back in the league anymore, but I think he's still up there, and we want to be treating him with the respect that he deserves. And so I think he's going to be a player that you can be starting or even flexing late into the season, maybe even your final roster. And so again, we want to be bidding aggressively on him. Around 11 to 13% would be my suggestion. And then let's see. We have the Titans and Patriots game. The player I wanted to talk about here was Travion Henderson. I cannot figure out what the Patriots are doing with Travion Henderson. I don't know what he said or done behind the scenes to head coach Mike Vrabel. Just 2 carries for 5 yards, and also not involved as a receiver, which is his thing. We saw Terrell Jennings, who I had never heard of, coming into this week, getting involved more than Travion Henderson. So for the time being, Travion Henderson probably belongs on waivers, maybe a bench stash, but certainly shouldn't be starting, which, you do not want to be in a position where you need to be starting him. Ramondre Stevenson still might not be as great of a running back as he occasionally is and isn't, but Travion Henderson has not shown signs that he is ready to take over that job. Moving on, we have the 49ers and the Falcons. A couple guys I want to talk about here. We have Drake London on the Falcons side. Targeted 10 times in this game, but just 4 receptions for 42 yards, no rushes, no touchdown. Going to be 8.2 points. Ultimately not a terrible game, but even still, that's just going to be not great for him. You're going to see him catch a lot more of those and catch a touchdown in most games. And so I still believe London's one of the elite receivers right now. Probably a top 20 overall player in all of fantasy football. Should be starting on your championship roster. I'd be bidding very aggressively on him around the 12 to 15% range. And like all the other players, if your team is struggling, even if it's struggling at running back and you want to bolster the wide receiver position, you could push those up a little bit. But again, we kind of want to try and get all these players at a really juicy value. So I know those all sound low, but I would try and generally stay on the lower side for all these guys. One more player to talk about here on the 49ers side. We have George Kittle. He is targeted twice in this game, no receptions. George Kittle publicly apologized to fantasy owners out there. He thought he was going to be more involved. That being said, I think he will certainly get more involved. This is a game coming back from injury. I think he was questionable coming into it. He'll ease back into it. And George Kittle also does this. He kind of has disappearing games. It's also just more common at the tight end position where you're more low target than you would be for a receiver or potentially a running back. I think George Kittle should be fine moving forward. I'd have him as a top 6 tight end moving forward as well, depending on how he performs and all. And so I think that we can be bidding decently to go get a top 6 tight end. That might be in the range of maybe 6 to 8%. Because that's a guy you can start, again, until weeks 12 to 14, right? We're in that same Breece Hall range as mentioned before. And so even though Breece Hall might feel like a better player than George Kittle at this moment, I think both will start for you for a similar amount of time, thus worth kind of similar amount of value. And then we have the Seahawks Texans game here. Don't think there's anyone we need to talk about here, actually. I mean, Kenneth Walker, off the top of the head, didn't look super great. We saw the touchdowns go to Zach Charbonnet. Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet have continued to be a super frustrating backfield for fantasy managers. Every week we've seen one dominate and the other not be super involved in. I don't know that Kenneth Walker can start on your team for very long. And therefore, I think he might also be in, say, like the 4 to 6% range. He's a guy that you can certainly start in these bye weeks to push you through, but probably shouldn't be starting late into the season, especially if this rushing attack continues just splitting carries. What's interesting is that if either one of these guys gets injured, the other one becomes extremely valuable, but we'll just have to wait and see with those. And then in the Lions-Buccaneers game, we have Sam Laporta, who I thought was worth talking about here. Just 3 targets, 3 receptions, 15 yards. So that's 4.5 fantasy points. I think Sam Laporta is still also in that tight end 5-6 range like George Kittle. Again, that means he could be started pretty late into the season. And so even though Laporta doesn't feel great with the 4.5 points, I think he might still be worth about 5 to 7% FAAB. He's still going to be a key part of this offense, still going to see very consistent targets. But again, tight end position just naturally variable. And so that's what we're going to see here with Laporta. Just as a reminder, I'm sure many of you already know it, but we have the weekly FAAB guide. It's free. It's going to be linked in the description. Plenty of great things on here. This week, made a bunch of huge updates. Just by entering your username, your sleeper username in here, it'll automatically fill in with a bunch of leagues that you can select, and then it'll naturally just import all your league data. And then this is a great tool just to give you general ideas of how much FAAB you should be bidding based on your league. You're going to have to take it with a grain of salt. There's a lot of leagues that would be bidding super aggressively or super light, and then you'll have to kind of adjust accordingly. But they should serve as a vague guide to kind of get you in the right direction, which I know a lot of new Guillotine players don't even know where to begin bidding. So I think this is a great resource for that. Also added this week are strength ratings. If you enter your team here and you select your league, this will populate with all the teams and how they've been faring in the past few weeks, a ranking just based on their points, and then a ranking also including the amount of FAAB that they have left. And again, all of the different values organized here by position, overall. This should be a great resource, and you should definitely check it out. To end off here, real quick, we're going to talk about some of the players who are out or on bye this week and how much they're roughly worth. And again, super easy. You can check this out all on here. We'll start off with Puka Nacua. I mean, we see him here at the top. He is roughly the number 1 overall player. I mean, that's pretty debatable with Bijan and Puka coming off injury, but Fantasy Pros, number 1 overall player remaining. You want to be bidding very aggressively to go get the number 1 overall player, especially now. He's going to be on bye. He will rest up. Probably 16 to 20% range. You want to be on this higher side probably for Puka Nacua. Also, we're going to have Brock Bowers out another game. Super unfortunate. I believe headed into his bye as well. Want to be in the 8 to 10% range on him. You can go to the tight end tab here. But still, a tight end 4 or 5 moving forward. I think it's totally understandable to see him moving behind players like Warren and Ferguson for now, especially given how the Raiders' offense have struggled. We're going to have Terry McLaurin missing another week. Also, probably not the greatest player in the sense that we might not want to start him coming off the injury, which means that how many more startable weeks do we have out of him? Not many right now. Might be in the 2 to 3% range on him. At quarterback position, we have Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson coming off their byes. Lamar's still questionable for this week moving forward. I think he's still a player that you want to get top 2, top 3 QB, depending on how you feel about it. I think top 2 when healthy. So we want to be in the 7 to 9% range on Lamar, and Josh Allen 9 to 12% range. You can even push that up when you are looking at the number 1 guy at a position. You want to go try and acquire that. So both of these players coming out of the bye should be great moving forward. Lamar, you might want to be a little bit more hesitant on just because of the injury, but if players don't want to bid on him at all in your league, definitely worth a low bid. Even if you have another great guy, so if you have Jalen Hurts, still tossing a bid on Lamar for 4 or 5 FAAB and see what you can do. 4 or 5% of your FAAB. And then similarly with the Bills and Ravens on bye, we had 2 elite running backs now coming off bye, and James Cook and Derrick Henry. With all the other running back injuries and byes and everything going on, definitely want to be bidding on the target to high side to get these guys. So again, Cook, we're in that 12 to 14% range, and Henry, we're in the 7 to 9% range. Couple other guys to talk about. We've Garrett Wilson. I mean, he's going to have Tyrod Taylor as his quarterback now. I'm not sure where he is on this list. Probably scrolled by him. But Garrett Wilson is not a guy that we are looking to get super aggressively. Let's see. Okay. So wide receiver 14. He's going to get peppered with targets from Tyrod Taylor. I mean, he's the number 1 on that team with not any great competition. So you're going to see a lot of value in PPR leagues. Want to be in the lighter side though, maybe. So we might want to be looking at the low to target 6 to 8%. Just doesn't represent a lot of upside. Does represent a decent floor given the targets, but the offense will just probably not be great on the Jets moving forward. Another guy, we have Jacoby Myers. We'll see if we can find him very quickly here, though we might not. Jacoby Myers down here. Raiders offense has been struggling. Jacoby Myers injured this past week, probably going into the bye this week. I don't know how many more startable weeks we have at Jacoby Myers. This is saying that in a standard league, you can start him until week 5, so we should be moving on from a player like him. If you want, you could bid 1 to 2% FAAB on him, but really do not push it up more than that. Let's see. Anything else we got here? I think Kyler Murray I wanted to talk about. Was hurt this week. A guy that you shouldn't be starting, right? Like he's a guy that we should have already had on our bench or already on waivers. So I would not be bidding on Kyler Murray at all. And then lastly, we'll end off with 2 more receivers. If we can find them, we got Deebo Samuel and Ricky Pearsall. Both guys that I think you can start even a little bit past this because of the buys and all. So maybe into the weeks 10 or 11 range, which means you have a couple startable weeks out of them. So for both of these guys, you're in the 3 to 4% range. And again, obviously you can push it up if you need, but hopefully that helps. Hopefully you are able to successfully make it through the buys these weeks. It's going to be tough sledding moving forward, but if you have any questions, feel free to message in the comments or let me know.